Hello, everyone. My name is Jiyoon, and it's an honor for me to give this talk today. Um, Pardon me, I'll need 1 minute to set up some tech stuff. I have PowerPoint, and I have ability to share from this laptop. Do you know? Maybe. Let's find out. I love PowerPoints because I feel like often visualization, it helps with the visualizations for me and for everyone who's listening. I like photos. Truth.
Go to Jiyoon.
I'm a millennial. I like my technology. So thank you for your patience. So Virya Paramita, saying vigorous yes and is the title of my Dharma talk. Who here has taken a improv class? You know, yeah. What does yes and mean, Paul?
Whatever your improv partners throw out there, you cannot negate. You have to say yes to it, and then you continue from that.
Yeah, that's right. So you asked Bobby what vigor means for me, and that's what vigor means for me, and I'll elaborate what I mean by that. So let's see. So my intention for the talk today, so if you haven't been here for a while, we have this 20 to 30 minutes long Dharma talk and group discussion because we believe that reflecting on your own, but also in conversation can deepen your understanding of wisdom and teaching that we want to share here. So here, I'm hoping to reflect on the teaching of Virya Paramita, which can be translated as a enthusiastic effort or vigor, and connect that idea to our reflection on how we can vigorously engage with the world as the accumulated condition of history. So, and I'll talk more about what I mean by accumulated conditions of history later on. All we know is that sometimes the reality seems messy. And it's easy to say no to that. Easy to be like, I'm gonna pretend that I didn't see that. Or I'm not gonna engage with that. Or, ooh, I'm gonna numb it out. I'm not gonna feel any reaction to this complicated reality, whether that be socio-historical one or it can be interpersonal one. So yes, and can you receive it and go further? So I need to clarify that I am not a ordained or trained scholar in Buddhist philosophy. So please pardon me if I misinterpret any ideas or represent certain concepts. I'm here to learn just like you. So feel free to let me know. And I'm learning over time. And I always consider myself as a student of wisdom tradition and also science. So on that note, I wanted to thank Ejo McMullen. He is a ordained monk of Soto Zen Buddhist Association, and he wrote this beautiful essay on Virya Paramita, which is where I drew some of my inspirations from. And I also drew inspiration from the New Yorker article called "How Albert Camus Faced History." So I have to thank Monsieur Camus and Adam Gopnik of the New Yorker on his essay on Camus. And I will explain why I'm making this connection, because I believe that we are lay people, we're our philosopher of our own, cultivating our own philosophy. So I thought it would be fun to invite Camille into this space. And also, I wanted to give more context to the word paramita because it's not clear for everyone what paramita is. For some of you, it's a familiar concept, so think of it as a review. So I wanted to address what paramita even is before moving forward. And Thich Nhat Hanh, whom you may or may not know, has this wonderful book called The Heart of the Buddha's Teaching. And Tuesday group is reading, kind of investigating each concept week by week. And I thought I wanted to share this particular one, Virya Paramita, that we reflected together last Tuesday. So there's 6 paramitas, and from this book, Thich Nhat Hanh writes, the 6 paramitas are a teaching of Mahayana Buddhism. Paramita can be translated as perfect realization. And the Chinese characters used for paramita means crossing over to the other shore, which is the shore of peace, non-fear, and liberation. The practice of the paramitas can be practice of our daily lives. We are on the shore of suffering, depression, perhaps anger, and we want to cross over to the shore of well-being. To cross over, we have to do something, and that is paramita. So in this book, the 6 paramitas are represented as this like really pretty flower. So all the flower petals come together. So I wanted to go over all 6 paramita real quick because I believe they're all connected, and it's good to have that big picture on our mind, even as we zoom in on just one of the paramita. So the first one is dana paramita, meaning giving, offering, generosity. Second, shila paramita, precepts of mindfulness trainings. And shanti paramita, inclusiveness, the capacity to receive, bear, and transform the pain or suffering. Virya paramita, diligence, energy, perseverance, vigor. And dhyana paramita, meditation. Prajna paramita, wisdom, insight, and understanding. So those are the things we want to cultivate to get to the other shore of peace. And but today we are focusing on Virya Paramita, the diligence, energy, perseverance, and vigor. And I believe that a picture is worth 1,000 words sometimes. So let me show you what I visualize when I hear Virya Paramita. So I grew up in Korea, and in Buddhist temples in Korea, each directions have a guardian that are protecting the temple and is supposed to ward off all the negative influence or energy anybody might be bringing in. And I don't know how well you can see, but his eyes are bulging and fiery, and the color is really vibrant. And I wanted to show this picture because often the stereotype of Buddhism or mindful practice that I saw is that it's calm, it's zen, it's very subdued, it's about negation. But there's this fiery engagement of, yes, this bulging eyes, this presence, protectiveness that I wanted to add to our collective mind as we talk about vigor. Yeah, and that also connects to Ezra McMillan's definition of vigor. He says, when we talk about vigor in terms of the perfection, paramita, it is not vigor for vigor's sake. We're talking about vigor that is liberating. And So what is liberating vigor and where can we apply vigor to realize specifically liberating vigor? Remember the bulging eyes of the guardian. Um, so Ejo says, apply the vigor in your mode of inquiry towards the world. And to use the language that's more familiar to us, if you are practicing mindfulness in Thich Nhat Hanh's tradition, you might have heard of gazing deeply. And simpler word would be also curiosity. There is sense of negation and lack of energy when you were to just say, hey, things are the way things are, just the way it is, and kind of shut off the curiosity. You might notice that lack of energy. So here, vigor, engaging vigor in your mode of inquiry means, why is that? There's a little more energy of curiosity and also gazing deeply into whatever is presented to you beyond what is just immediately visible. Yeah, and Ejo writes, and this energy of vigor comes from the sense of responsibility when we realize that we're entangled with all beings and things. Again, connected to Thich Nhat Hanh's idea of interbeing, how we are always connected to one another, whether that be energy of one another, or presence, or great beings, or more. So yeah, she says, so think about the spirit of guardians, bulging eyes. I will gaze deeper into this than what is immediately visible. And that vigor is one way of cultivating liberating vigor. And another way we can apply liberating vigor is picking the right action. The reason I was really drawn to Plum Village tradition was the emphasis on engaged Buddhism, how the engagement with environmentalism, social justice was part of Thich Nhat Hanh's teaching and encouragement. And Ejo's essay in particular, I really enjoyed because he says, despite the word mindfulness and what we might assume that it means, we don't need to know everything to take the action. And he introduces this fun story from a Buddhist text called Marvelous Stories from the Perfection of Wisdom. Have you heard of the story of Buddha's past life as a fighter? Because to me, this was really fun. Because when we think of Buddha, you see him sitting very calm or lying down. But this particular story introduced by Ejo Mullen refers to Shakyamuni Buddha's past life as a fighter of a this ghost being that was trying to harm people. So let me read a passage from there to shake up your idea of Buddha. So he encountered this ghost called Rakshasa ghosts that are often representing evil, but also shows up in different forms throughout the sutras. And to protect the group of merchants that he was leading, one of the past lives of Shakyamuni Buddha, he literally throws his fist at this ghost. Right hand, left kick, right kick. And all of those didn't work. And then Shakyamuni Buddha himself goes for a headbutt. So, and that's Buddha for you. And to me, that's really eye-opening to add that image to my idea of Buddha. So reflecting on the story, Ejo McMullen says, this is the total investment. This is just to working with completely trapped because both hands and both feet at this point of the fight was tangled up with the ghost in the story. You just go for the headbutt and go for the total investment. So in that, that's bigger to me. And Virya, Paramita, the word apparently Virya and the word Vira that you may have heard of if you take a yoga class and was told to take hero pose, apparently they share the root. So it's invitation to be a hero. This teaching of vigor means find your hero within you, find the fighter within you. And this is a quote from Edjo's essay that I wanted to read and share with you, as this is the one that inspired my talk today. So bodhisattvas did not just force themselves onto the battlefield to cut down what is inconvenient or problematic. Inevitably, because we must face these enduring formations, the path would lead to great difficulties, to our own incapacity to resolve the enduring karma of our lives and the world. We will have to make difficult choices, be stuck with the conundrum of what it means to work hard, even when there's no end in sight. This is where we need vigor. Virya, Paramita. So when I read that when there's no end in sight, we still work hard, the image came to me, and there was the image of the myth of Sisyphus. And it's an essay that I really enjoyed when I was studying literature by Albert Camus. And Camus' philosophy was centered around his refusal to let abstractions to simplify the reality of history that he was facing. As an Algerian, he was struggling with the relations between France and Algeria, his hometown, and where he was operating, mostly in Paris. So the essay written by Adam, forgetting his last name, in the New Yorker, he writes, telling Sisyphus that he'll get that stone up there someday is an empty hope. He won't. Camus imagined Sisyphus committed to his daily act. He doesn't encourage him to hope for a better stone or a shorter hill. The counsel given him essentially the same short-term commitment to the best available course of action, but by accepting that the boulder is always going to roll back down, Camus put a tragic mask on the common sense and a heroic face on the daily boulder's daily grind. I want to replace that word daily grind with practice. And vigor is about making every moment a practice of how much can you engage with the situation, how much you can engage and connect with another person, and putting your energy into it, elbow grease into it. This is the image I wanted to share. The famous essay ends with, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. So I've given you a lot of philosophical ideas, but it's easier to sometimes reflect when you hear real life reflections. I wanted to share my own life and how I'm connecting these ideas of vigor and saying yes and to the complicated world. So to hopefully start the engine of your own reflection of your life. So the experience that I wanted to share was the time I worked as a legal department assistant intern at International Rescue Committee, which is a refugee resettlement agency. And what that meant is that there are refugee populations that are being sent to Dallas, and this in legal department, we are filling out mountains of legal forms to allow them to enter the United States and also help them get a job. And it was literally mountains of paperwork that I was dealing with every day. And it was very overwhelming, not just because I was dealing with this incredible amount of paperwork every day and different people in different distress, trauma every day. But part of my struggle during that time And this is not a criticism on International Rescue Committee at all, or any of the existing system. But due to the procedure, what I had to do was to ask this list of questions to people who are arriving to the United States for the first time after being in the refugee camp for many years, most of the time. This list of questions that to me felt like very re-traumatizing. I had to ask all these questions about how many children they had, and a lot of them had lost many of their children's, but I had to somehow collect the year of birth and year of death of every family member as anybody was entering. And I had to document that. And even if they were not part of the immigration process, even if they were passed away many years ago, when they didn't really have access to documentation. So sometimes they weren't sure, but it was my job to ask all these questions and document their past that to me seemed like irrelevant at this point. And there were all these questions too that were a little dehumanizing to ask. And I was asked these questions too when I was getting green card and getting visas, such as, do you plan to commit genocide in this country? That's a real question. I was getting student visa and I was asked that question. Do you plan to commit murder? Do you plan to commit essentially crimes? And often, exactly. No, no, and I was often infuriated at this because when you see people that are arriving at the office, many of them had to come with the translators. There's this bafflement in receiving these questions. Like what? Why are you asking me these questions? And why am I having to tell you about my dad's son that happened like 10 years ago during the war? And that's where I've kind of felt this no energy of like, in ideal world, this is not how things should work. If things were streamlined better, if people were more accepting, I had all this inner chatter of no, like this is wrong, I don't like it. And this is where I reflect on the teaching of vigor. Curiosity even towards the system that is the best we got. And instead of saying no, how can I say yes and in a creative way? Instead of resenting this strange interview process that I had to do with so many people every day, instead of shutting that myself down, I'll just monotonously asking the question to move on. How can I make this vigorous practice compassion? Of course, at the time I wasn't thinking in that way. So this is future Jiyoon reflecting on the past experience. So here, the liberating vigor, applying liberating vigor to the mode of inquiry would be to look into how we got to the point that our legal forms require all this documentation of the past, even if that includes something really painful, even if it includes something that is no longer relevant to the given situation. And the legal form has come with like so many different evolutions. It was interesting to talk to my boss at the time, who's been immigration process of many different kinds for many years. So that's a living artifact of history. And I'm not saying it's ideal, but there is a reason how the legal form came to be. And when you look at it in the historical lens, instead of seeing it as a tool of harm or bad thing, there's more engagement that I could feel. How do I use these forms so that this person's future procedure unfolds smoothly, and also learn something about the immigration system? and applying the vigor to the right action. For me at the time, it was giving my full compassion and being there and feeling that sadness, feeling this unimaginable trauma these people went through. And that was my way of saying yes. Instead of, I'm not gonna shut down here. I'm gonna like feel what you're feeling with you. And yeah. Like I was thinking that I might cut a tear off. I might grab tissue before, but I forgot to do that. And it was an interesting experience because once I said yes to feeling it with them, there were times that I was crying with the during the interview process with the interviewee, and it felt very different from legal office. It felt kind of like a therapist office, and that act of combing through the past for them, it became an opportunity for me to get to know them instead of somebody who's sitting here from whatever country. I was realizing, I was seeing them as human deeper. And that was the shift that I experienced from, no, this is bad, this is not ideal, this is wrong. I don't want to engage with this, this is overwhelming, to, okay, let's say yes to this mess and see what happens. So that was my version of history and accumulation of all these conditions, moments, mistakes. And we're living that manifestation of all this accumulation of past events, actions, somebody's thought. So as we are inheriting that, kind of like the boulder of Sisyphus, and as Joe said, the massive karma that we inherited, we're not here to solve it. We're not here to cut through it. We're not trying to get rid of the inconvenience, but instead headbutting at it. In that spirit, I wanted us to kind of reflect for your experience. And the invitation here is let's reflect on the time when you experience like, no, from the inevitable disappointment that comes from the discrepancy between idealism and complex reality. So if there's a time that you felt like no towards complicated situation, whether that be interpersonal, familial, or saying no to, like what really breaks my heart is when I hear people say, I'm not going to register, I'm not going to vote because everything is messed up, So just invitation here is to reflect on when you personally said no, or when you knew someone who said no to a situation that is less than ideal. And I'll hold the space for reflection for 7 deep breaths. And we'll breathe. If something comes, that's great. If it doesn't, that's okay too. Let's hold space of reflection here. Another invitation for your reflection is, have you experienced, this is more complicated than I previously thought, and felt shift in energy in your engagement? For me, that was the legal documents that I hated so much to, there's a history behind this. There's functions to some of these. that helped me to engage with it better. You know, if you thought something somebody said was rude, mean, but then you realize that it came from more complicated space than what you assumed. Um, so hold space for them and breath. If anything comes up for you, and lastly, just relax and see what comes up for you. Again, if nothing comes up, that's okay. We are just planting the seed of reflection even after we step out of here. The last question that I wanted to ask is, what simple action can you take today in the spirit of practice with the Sisyphus vigor towards the boulder, with the headbutt of Buddha? What action would bring more vigor into your life? What can you engage? What can you say yes to? What does that look like? I'll hold space for 7 breaths. For making space for reflection. What came to me was, you know, I'm not going to end the world hunger, but I've been meaning to volunteer at Food Pantry, and maybe that's my little pushing back at the boulder, headbutting against the ghost kind of action. So here I wanted to shift the gear and invite you to do a little small group discussion, because often in conversation more ideas can arise than silent reflection. So if you will, if you could form a group of 3, 2 or 3 or so, maybe 3 here, over here, 3 triangle shape back, 2 whoever's in proximity, like 3, 3, 4, or and so on. If you prefer to not have a conversation, because some people like to be in silent headspace after meditation, just place your hand on your heart or let people know that you would rather sit in silence. But otherwise, you can make eye contact. See what kind of conversation arises in you, and it doesn't have to be based on these prompts. It doesn't have to be strictly about what was said in my talk. See what comes up for you, and we will have this conversation for let's say 8 minutes, and I might ring the bell to signal that the 8 minutes is up. And there's Nick on Zoom. Maybe I'll talk to Nick one-on-one. Would that be doable, or?
Unless you get on, you're on.
I'll get on the Zoom and then go to the other room. Okay, so enjoy your conversations.